it's the same story, but I'm going to be providing other information, more information about the NIH from my experience. And my experience is very different than the applicant's experience. So I was told we want to be encouraging and all this. The program officers are all also about the fact. It's about the reality, and it's about I'll bring up add some additional details to some of the things that were. So there's going to be some overlap, and why is there overlap? It's because these are important areas. Okay, you're gonna see a theme there. So I have no conflicts. I checked. Yeah. And the learning objectives to understand something about K&R. Well, that's true. That was kind of part of the prior presentations. The current application and grant trends. I'll show you some of that data. Understand who decides the merit of the NIH grant. So we were talking. What did you hear this morning in this morning's presentation? Who decides the merit of an application to submit to the NIH? Who decides? Well, you know what I hear, and I've had some, every time someone says the NIH won't fund my research, I can't tell you how much. I mean, I had hallway difficulties, conversations with people, and there's one on tape. If you're curious, I'll tell you where to find it. It was just broadcast recently by the National Academy of Sciences, where, the speaker got up and said, the NIH won't fund our research. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can imagine. You want to talk about that? I don't have sadness. I have anger. I think because I think the truth is the way forward. Okay? It's not the NIH for all of you beginning your careers. It's not the NIH for K's and early career R's. That's not. There is when you get to the really big mega projects like Dan was showing you a page from a summary statement page, over $1 million a year. There's other issues, but that's another conversation. All right. Oh, I guess I didn't cover all and understand scientific questions. Do well. We'll talk about that. Okay. So I thought I should start. The senior faculty in the room know who I am. I have 32 years of experience at the NIH. I started out as a neuroscientist, a senior staff fellow. I became a program officer, and then over the years I became a branch chief and eventually director of the National Center on Sleep Disorders Research. In terms of grant mechanisms, I work with almost everything. Okay, K's, R's, T's, P's, the whole alphabet. And I've worked on, been program officer, administering research, everything from basic discovery of science discovery to multi-site clinical trials. Okay, so I've worked with all of them and almost all in the sleep and circadian fields. I personally was involved in putting out over 35 funding opportunity announcements over my career. My portfolio, I love the computer. You just push the button. I've worked with over 7,000 grant applications, 1,600 awards, and which amounted to nearly $2 billion over my career when I retired. I did my postdoc at UTMB Galveston in Southwestern, and I graduated from Chapel Hill in pharmacology. Okay, so our agenda today, we're going to talk, just as we said in the opportunities, the National Institutes of Health. One of the things I want to put forward is that it's a really big organization. Part of your opportunity is understanding how many niches there are to work in. Okay, it's not just one pot. You want to look at all the opportunities. The application merit, we talked about whose yardstick, and this thing that we keep talking about in almost every presentation and yesterday, and it's going to keep coming up. What is the question? So it's important to understand that NIH's legislative mission is this thing that encompasses everything. It's a perfect fit for sleep. The fundamental knowledge about the nature and behavior of living systems that apply in nature to enhance health, lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. It's the same thing as we were talking about. Why is your research important? So all your thinking fits under this heading. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. The NIH in 21 had a research budget of about $43 billion. 32 of those billions went to public grants, roughly 11,000 new funding awards, giving out thousands and thousands of grants every year. The average success rate over the entire, that 11,000 is roughly in the 9–10% range. The NIH at any one time, keep in mind, this is a massive bureaucracy. The NIH has oversight of all these grants. There's roughly about 58,000 active projects that are being monitored. And we're supporting a global medical research workforce estimated to be around 300,000 researchers, mostly in the United States, but in countries worldwide.
How many people at NIH? Yeah, it's like
Employed, they're under 10,000.
10,000.
And 100,000 is PIs or PIs and co-investigators?
That's all, that's everyone that's in the grants that we can count.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not just the PIs and the co-PIs, but also the staff, the teams that make it work. I mean, think about it. It's a pretty big employment employer,
Key personnel,
including key personnel and others.
Oh, okay.
So what does the picture look like? And here's a plot from 1995 to 2021. There, the red bars are the number of applications NIH is receiving, and guess what? It kind of goes up a lot. And this is focusing mostly on the R's and K's, not everything. And then the success rate overall. So well, you know, it is a competition, okay? But here's the thing. This is not something for you to worry about. This is not something for you to think about, because every application is not equal.
This
Okay.
first up, what is it?
This is all application. This is A0s, A1s. Of course, back, I can't remember when it changed, but you know, we used to have A2s, A3,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Okay. So this is all application within the K and R Light portfolio. But again, it's not this looks daunting. This is like, you know, going for the lottery or something. But it's much better than that, because the real competition isn't among all the applications. It's among those that are a little bit better prepared. And that's what this conversation, you don't have to be perfect. Okay, I'm trying to be encouraging. You don't have to be perfect. It's not about perfection, but you have to be a little bit better than, you know, above the median and the averages to be in the competitive pool of conversation. Okay, that's what we're talking about. I wanted to point out about the niches. The NIH is not one office. There's over 27 funding components, institutes and centers. There's also offices. There's offices, they're not all listed in here, but there's many offices that support research, but they don't actually issue awards. But look, all these institutes, okay, are part of this organization. And this presents a lot of complexity and burden. You heard about instructions. So the standard form 424, I guess it is, for grant applications, it's a fine print and it's 240 pages long, and they're constantly changing those policies. And you've heard some of that frustration given today. So if we were to look at sleep and circadian, again, K and R-like applications, I did an analysis of the niches, okay? And so there's a number of niches listed here, okay? Different institutes with the largest number of grants in fiscal year 21, probably. At the NHLBI, NIH, Aging Institute has been growing rapidly. But the point is that sleep and circadian research is supported across the NIH in almost all these niches. Okay, and it changes from year to year, and it adds up to a lot of money. All right. In fiscal year 21, there were 164 new competing. This is active grants. This is new competing awards. Okay, and it says that I added it up, I guess, 623 active grants. So I don't think I have a slide of it, but now if you were to go in and look at the data today, and Nurse Brown, my replacement, the director of NCSR, was saying that the budget for 2022 for sleep is now on the order of $500 million a year. A big improvement over when I started, and it was about, I don't know, 150 million or something. Okay. So there's all these niches. Now let's talk a little bit about where the money comes from to understand what goes on. And Congress sets the budget. Okay, you heard about budgets for your grant. Well, Congress gives the NIH, the federal agency, how much we should spend and how many grants we should give in training, in research, and center, and everything else, basically. And this is what a typical budget table looks like. You don't need to read the fine print. But research careers, for instance, it says we should, NIH, according to legislation, should go for 4,868 grants and about $1 billion. Okay. That's the K&R budget in 21. Did it say, we'll just say whatever, it says 22 actually. So the NIH, the government agency, can't really change these numbers easily. They can, little changes can be made and tweaked. But remember that this amount of money, this table exists for every institute. Congress says how much this institute and this niche will spend on all these different funding measures. All right, it's not about you, and it's not about the NIH making this. This is the starting point. It's legislation. It's that socio-political platform that I talked about in our offline conversation so far. So Congress sets the budget, but how the budget is implemented is defined by the institute. The Congress doesn't say you will give out these FOAs usually. There are some exceptions. The institute sets the pay lines. The institute defines the administrative procedures, the terms of the award, what it requires. That's why the K's and the R terms, the policies will vary from institute to institute, and the institute makes funding decisions. Only the institute director is authorized, or their delegate is authorized by law to sign the pay plan. The institute director, sometimes the institute director will, it's possible they can go in and they can cross off anything they want. And we have had cases where sleep gets crossed out, okay, and over the years. Doesn't happen all the time and stuff, but it's very rare. It's not something for you to worry about. But I just want to point out that this is the hierarchy. There's a bureaucracy, and you can't, it's fixed, and it's socio-political in nature in its starting point. No, generally they won't do that.
Okay.
I mean, it happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Anyway, and so all these institutes are developing their own policies and their own implementation to issue awards. This is why it is so important for you to cultivate that relationship with the program officers that's relevant to your grant application, whether it's Aging Institute or neurology or the NHLBI. And just cannot understate, start today, and they need to give them that one pager, a draft, something for them to react to. Okay, and they can help you understand what's going on at that institute. So you've already gone through this in some of the other presentations today. I'm presenting this, these a lot more details here. What is the difference between the K's and the R's? Okay, and it's a big deal. Of course, the K's are generally mentored career development. You have to be a U.S. resident or citizen. You do not have to be a U.S. resident or citizen for R grants. And there's, of course, a lot of story there. There's effort that's committed here, the duration, the rules are institute specific, and the success rates are different. For K-23s, overall, institute success rates vary from 14% to 100% at some institutes. KOAs vary from 0% at some institutes to 100% at some institutes. And that was from last year. For the R's, there's a different set of, you can see the success, they're geared for different purposes. The NIH is trying to support research careers in research. There's the LRP if you're a clinician, and there's these mechanisms. We tend to fund on average, a very high percentage. And this is all public data. It's all available to you.
K99, I think, if I've been international student or can apply.
No, K's by legislation must be awarded to
K99?
K99.
I'm not apply. I'm not.
You didn't have status in the United States? You had no residence? Well,
Check that.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I think the K-99 is.
it can be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I stand corrected. Okay. There's very few sleep K. It's a very, I don't know how the NIH rationalized the law, but you know, because anything in there's laws written about this. Okay. More about this in terms of the different mechanisms, and we don't need to go through this. We've heard about this morning, and we're going to get more details about this. But the slide is in my deck, which I assume is available to everyone, right? So you can look through this, and we've already heard about most of it. Let's go on.
What's the story why one is good and nine is bad? That usually
We'll talk about that offline. The NIH has revised its scoring schemes a couple of times over the last 30 years. And they had a committee and they decided that's what they're going to do. Okay. That's not covered by law, how will it be scored? So you've already also heard about this, that the first step in the decision process is peer review. It's not about in most cases, not about the program officer or the institute or NIH. It's that peer review process. The NIH organizes about 1,500 review meetings a year, and they usually require about 17,000 reviewers. And finding sleep reviewers, as I mentioned earlier, is tough to find because they're not, first of all, not all sleep reviewers are equal. Some reviewers put more energy and commitment to the reviews and representing the science. Some are less experienced. The second part of that process, of course, is the percentile rank. So you get a 2-digit average. We talk about how the reviewers use one number between 1 and 9, and then they take the average of everyone at the table, not just the assigned reviewers, everyone at the table in the chair, both a single digit. That number is average multiplied by 10, and then that becomes your impact score. And that's how Ks are, not all, but most institutes, Ks are evaluated. Their merit is based on the impact score. The R applications are considered based on percentile rank. This gets complicated. It's hard to get a picture of this because we take the rank of the 2-digit impact score, where it falls among the impact score of all applications in the preceding 2 review rounds. So it's kind of a sliding process. Hard to picture a little bit, but it's also about keeping things kind of constant and smooth as things change. Another thing to be considering is when we talk about the rank where your application in an R, this is the R, this is the K. For the R, it's where you fall in to the, where all the applications in your study section. Okay, well, your study section and its history and its voting pattern distribution, where you fall in there. So it's unique to each study section, and that base, that distribution is recalculated with each cycle of review. So it's constantly changing. And if you're in a special review section, there's other bases can be used, and they won't tell you what base was used. That's not on the summary statement usually. Okay. This is something that's hard to absorb, and we've touched on it several times. You have to keep in mind. That everyone at the table's opinion all count equally. The assigned reviewers, the non-sleep people, and if you're doing K applications, there will be maybe 20 different areas of expertise represented. But whatever it is, and they're going to represent a lot of different areas. And this is why we keep talking about making it clear right up front what it is that you're proposing to accomplish. Okay. Any uncertainty tends to lower the score. That's the issue. Uncertainty. And just to pick on Dan's summary statement, there was an issue of CBT and how important or valuable it is to clinical practice, right? Because there's different opinions about that. Now, Safwan had in here early, if I can say this, because it was kind of public, you had a little thing with long-term potentiation. And boy, I didn't know how that one was going to turn out, because there were some parts of the community of compensatory control that didn't think long-term potentiation was an issue in compensatory control, or they had different opinions than some. Anyway, the point is that you need to, as you think about how you present it, you need to think about your audience. It's not the sleep meeting. It's this bunch of people that are faculty at universities that are on this review panel. Confidence in what you say, if they can grasp it, if they accept it, tends to lead to higher scores. Yeah.
It says for people, and
Sure.
maybe it's obvious to everyone, but again, in the study section, there may be like 30 reviewers, right? Your application is free. They will read your application for everything. They will read the discussion. There's 27 reviewers in the room who haven't read your application, or maybe they've read something that run the specific themes for the abstract. Okay. So again, just to connect all that and make sure we're very clear about this. Here, your message is more clearly your assigned reviewers can communicate with the entire room, right? As all those 30 people, all of their votes come equally, even though some have not read your application. They're going to is the comments from your assigned reviewers. So again, make it easier for your assigned reviewers. They will make it easier for the discussion, the whole group. They will get people, their comments are very positive when you've written their application. And all those other reviewers find it easy to go along with the application.
Yeah, it was said earlier, so I can't remember what that one Dan said. If you get to the end of the first page, the aims page, and they don't know what it is, you're kind of got a problem. What are my own time? Oh, well, I'll never be finished with that.
5 hours.
I'm sorry, it's just we haven't even gotten through the anyway. So here, this is just to underscore this idea of who are you talking to, because those 20 or 30 reviewers, come at it from many perspectives. What does your field consider to be urgent scientific opportunity? Okay, and this is a problem in sleep because, in my opinion, I don't think the sleep profession has done a great job of promoting its science. That's not about what one individual. Dan writes the stated papers, and and other people start, but you need to promote that science in order to set the stage for peer review. So, and this is kind of what we're saying. How do the peer reviewers grasp the research opportunity? So this is how you think about the science. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with this. You make an observation, you ask a question, form a hypothesis, hopefully write that hypothesis into the aims page. You do the experiment. This is what your business is, okay? But there's a gap between how you're thinking about it and how the reviewers are going to be thinking about it. What is the most competitive question for the competition? For the competition. May not be your vision, but what is the slice of your vision that's important? Not all questions are equal in that competition. And we've talked about relevance to medicine, intuitively compelling to all those reviewers. Timeliness. Why do this now? The NIH receives, whatever it was, 50, 60,000 grant applications a year. Your study section may look at 100 applications. Why is this question? There's always going to be more questions. Is this the most timely question? And for opportunity, crisp and well focused, right? We talked about this a lot. And this all builds on the confidence and certainty of reviewers. They're going to be, not always, but there often will be linking this to advance our understanding, significant impact on our understanding of disease risk, etiology, or treatment. whether you're doing basic research or genomics, or you're doing clinical studies? Will it make a difference? So which slice of your scientific vision is best for the NIH grant application? And this is a tough, I know I've read your proposals. They're all, in my opinion, excuse me, many of them are overly ambitious, covering way too much ground, careers worth of science. Focusing, selecting, digging deep into a question, I think, will put you in a better stead for the purpose of the competition, because there's all these other proposals on the table. And so it all starts with you, the investigator. It's not about the NIH. You scan the scientific space. You are the expert. You and your colleagues and your team. You go to meetings. You should be. You need to be aware of this bigger picture. What's important? Because you're going to select the competitive question. You're going to choose the grant mechanism, and this thing that I think is very important: promoting your science. When you go to meetings and you shake hands, it's important who they see. Reviewers are human beings, and it's very likely that you may run across or interface with possible reviewers of your grant application down the table. And they may not know you very personally, but it is your public interaction, listening to them, listening to people at meetings, and you're promoting your science, explaining yourself, and getting it across, having what you heard this morning, the elevator pitch, okay, will put you in a stronger stead, because if they may carry that memory into the review room. Just because they shook your hand somewhere doesn't mean it's a conflict of interest. And so I had some slides. I'm going to have to speed it up, although I understand, Catherine, you said I could take all your time, so yeah. So I apologize to those watching the schedule. So what is the question? And I just picked some simple examples. Insufficient sleep causes death. Okay, well, death is really important. I mean, that's a big thing. Another way to present the question might be, does insufficient sleep cause disease? And there's a laundry list of possible conditions, right? Another way to present the same story for the purpose of the grant competition, may not be the way we think about it, is we have all kinds of diseases which we don't fully understand. Does insufficient sleep modify that outcome? Whatever, I'm just using these examples, right? But you can see how these can come across to different audiences. You can gain more confidence. Heart disease is a great example, right? There is no debate that cardiovascular disease kills people. There's no question. Whether you don't get enough sleep, maybe that's kind of a debate. So if you start with insufficient sleep, in certain areas, you may not have as strong a foundation. For the purpose of grant competition, you might want to consider whether, and some of you did this in your application, to start with a starting point that everyone agrees with. Particularly if you're a new investigator. Established investigators have more leeway. But you might want to think about this style or this approach. It's not the only way. People can be funded in other ways, but this might give you the strongest platform, because these are national emergencies. Every medical school, every academic research center recognizes the importance of these and other disease conditions. Don't pick athletes for something obscure, right? It's just not going to compete. So I for the purpose of this presentation, I also picked a few examples, and we could even better. I could have used their specific aims page, and I thought about redoing it, but anyway. So these are from decades ago, but they're still kind of funny. The questions that they allude to are still true today. Our project focuses on elucidating neural circuits that drive daily rhythms and wakefulness, activity, feeding, hormone secretion, and keep those functions synchronized. Great science, right? What is the question? There we go. What is the question? What was the impact of this knowledge on medicine? Okay, no clue. Why is this an urgent research priority? Does it need to be done now or can it be done later? Remember, there's a never-ending supply of questions. What part of the peer review process is to prioritize the questions that that panel has a consensus or maybe, as on average thinks is more important. That's what the merit process is accomplishing. Circadian clock is increasingly being implicated in the etiology of psychiatric diseases, including bipolar mania. The goal of this proposal is to improve our understanding. Anyway, on and on. Okay. What is the question? So don't get me wrong. It's great. It's nice. It's informative. You're talking about all this background stuff. But I would encourage you to consider getting the question up there so that all this explanation that follows the question is clear. Again, the same issues. What is the impact? What is the priority? Why should we do this now? So here's a specific aims page from years past. This is a C. Elegans story. Microscopy has emerged as the most powerful and informative way to analyze all this stuff. Okay, so think about it. Microscopy has emerged. Wow, this was true 20, 30 years ago with C. Elegans. So we could do some amazing things. Methodology, technology, gizmos are not the question. It's not the opportunity of what are we going to learn. Now, don't get me wrong, there are grants and mechanisms where technology can carry the weight of the competition. But often that is not the strongest, that's not the reason to do the research. What will we accomplish with this technology? That's the, here's another one that many of your draft applications had. So image analysis methods are insufficient. What we can't do, the negative information, doesn't carry the weight of the opportunity. What is the opportunity? The method's insufficient. That isn't exactly why we should do this study. It tends not to help. What you want to do is go back to, I'll give Joe credit again, the value proposition. What is the opportunity? Notice that this all comes back to, it's easy for us to write about the use of shovel, okay? And, the shovels we have aren't good enough, so we should research more shovels. And there is research like that that's done. But for a new investigator, an early stage investigator, competing at least at the NIH competition, that may not go over, that may not buy the day. Because what they want to hear is, how are you going to change our understanding of a problem that we think is a problem today, a priority? I'm skipping over it. We propose to develop algorithms was another thing in there that I pointed. Developing methodology is not, again, it isn't pointing to the opportunity. Okay, it's pointing to, we don't have the tools to do it, to what we're proposing. Okay.
Clarify. Is this the NIH's opinion, or is this?
This is my 25 years of experience of listening to thousands and thousands of reviews and dealing with disappointed, angry applicants.
So
how about
panel members are
it shows up all the time. The panel members don't say that they're going to use the reviewers will use different words. They're going to, they often will express uncertainty. And there's a lot of words about uncertainty. So we talked a lot about formatting, and this is kind of what it looks like if you're, Dan Bicey studying, looking at his 50th application of the night. It's a blurry page. When you think about formatting, you have to think today. In the old days, it was on paper, and that had its issues. Today, everything's on the screen. So you need to think about making it pop off the page. We're back to what is the question? Make it crisp, make it pop. And I'll just skip through these because we're running out of time. I happen to like the idea of stating the question up front as a point of reference, but from which everything that follows will, kind of unfold from the headline, from the overarching issue. We've heard about using headers. We've talked about the contribution feasibility of each aim, advancing the field as a critical gap. Not just filling space, or we're going to develop algorithms. Developing algorithms is nice, but what is it that we're going to accomplish? Your goal, yes, you as a scientist are going to develop algorithms. That's what you're going to do. But for the purpose of competition, what needs to be done? Okay. We don't have time to cover this, but think about, there isn't much discussion of this, but goals, aims, and objectives are kind of different levels of organization, okay? And something to give a head of. You've already had presentations on this. Here's something I'll add to what you heard this morning. We talked about white space, others referred to white space used effectively for on-screen reading. If you feel formatting isn't your forte, contract and let someone who has a demonstrated track record, because there's people out there that can do this stuff. If you don't know how to, whatever, make the software work, just get someone to do it. That's my suggestion. You want every edge in the competition. Now, there's a lot of other things said this morning, but I do feel I do want to mention this, and that is, these are some of the rules, and those rules are you have to, the hyperlinks and URLs may not be used to provide information necessary to application review. Reviewers are not, you put a link in there, their reviewers are not obligated to look at it. So, you want to be very careful about that. Digital images, there's limitations and there's rules and policies about that. If they don't prohibit you from using multi-columns and line, all this technology that you can rearrange things, probably not a good idea. Because for e-review, it may not work on the reviewer's device. Do not use document headers and footers. So the feature in Word, right? Don't do that because it could result in an application that won't be accepted. You want to be very careful. PDFs and Word have all kinds of technology. You can put comments and stuff. All of that is a problem. Don't do that. Do not use the appendix to circumvent page limits. I can tell you, this is the Center for Scientific Review, where your application is accepted, okay, and assigned and referred. They're looking for what we call stuffing the application, and you wouldn't believe a single link in your appendix could disqualify. I have seen sleep applications, from senior people. They put a link in some some method like reproducibility. They put a link in the reproducibility, and their application was returned without review. There is no appeal. It's kind of a this is an example of where you have to be very careful.
Like on the bios.
Yeah, so just be careful. Appendices is people, if you're a normal human being, you have all these visions using the appendix. Be very careful that you do not, whatever the current mood and tendencies, because they can just return the application without discussion.
There are actually guidelines for what included in it.
Yeah, but it's hard.
There are whole categories of things that tell you don't. Yeah, the link to bibliography is actually, that's what it's the heart of the application. So that's the one that what assumption.
But appendices is an area with, I think it's, people will interpret it different ways.
Just reinforcement, like I said too, there's these arcane instructions. There's things about how many parameters per inch and lines per inch. And you say certainly so
We're trying to do that.
At a college, they had a data word review. I mean, just it was an innocent mistake. There were changing characters per inch. All these months of
That's where.
but the point is that it would happen. So like everyone's saying, read the instructions and that the instructions change, but people actually are checking.
Oh yeah, they have a huge contract staff that goes through these things. I mean, and then the SROs will check. Some of the SRO, but they're all human, and so their implementation of the policy will vary from study section, which can be confusing because you'll say, well, I had this experience with this study section and they didn't do anything, and now you're cut. This is why talking with people is, anyway, another thing is the, the reviewers are human, okay? Things end up, like this is an article from JAMA, okay? That just came out over the summer, trends in the use of promotional language and abstracts of successful NIH applications. So a guy from, I told some of you about this, someone from Canada and a Japanese investigator downloaded the entire public data set and did an analysis. And if you want to go read it, the links are here, you can go. But they came up with 130 words. But you see, it's not the policy of the NIH per se, but this conversation, based on people I've talked to in the peer review process, is being discussed among reviewers around the table. I mean, it's not part of policy, but it's put uncertainty in thoughts. It's just an example of one of the fads, to try to stay aware of. And so I just captured, this is what they concluded in their paper. Applicants increasingly describe their work in subjective terms that rely on appeals to emotion. I just want to say, after 25 years of watching peer review, I have never seen a peer review modified by hype or appeals to emotion. I've never seen the outcome of a review based on it. I don't know. I mean, I don't think that there's anything. This is based on people who have never had an NIH grant from other countries.
No, but just play devil's advocate. I mean, you're saying to make the implications, the importance clear up front, and that leads us to sometimes use words like critical, crucial.
Yeah.
And those are,
essential.
and this analysis, which JAMA chose to publish as a big thing, okay, but wait, there's more to this, because just to make it worse, the NIH director, these are just some examples of some of the words. I mean, urgent, powerful, right? I've never seen any of these words change any review outcome. That's ridiculous.
How can you say that? Yeah. Because reviewers are responding to what's in front of them. This is part of what's.
Personally, I'm just saying that I don't think that any major deviations in impact scores, I've never observed it, from the use of these appeals to emotion to change outcome.
I don't see how you know that though, because the reviewers are responding to the application, and what makes them think that the application is great could well be some of these words.
So the reviews are people, so they have emotion, but they're not gonna write their emotion to critique.
They're not gonna put it
They're gonna write a rationale,
Yeah.
that is emotionless, but the emotions are when they're right.
But you can see, for the trainees, you can see this conversation is an example of the confusion. And it's not that you don't want to use these words, just keep in mind that people could be thinking about it.
These things will influence reviewers in ways that the reviewers
That-
aren't aware.
That's the charge of that's what the authors conclude, even though they have no experience with the review process. So
They should have been experienced. This is improved.
this is just down for, and they had powerful computers and software, and they applied it to a public database.
So that means next time I write a grant, I'm gonna invite F. Scott Fitzgerald.
So this is why I even bothered chose this one. There's lots of these little sidebar conversations, but it was because Mike Lauer, the director of extramural research at NIH, published an editorial to go with that paper, in which he kind of lends some weight to this. And he said there's evidence, there's increasing concern about poor quality science coming out of NIH, and what he refers to as reproducibility. And so there are policies about this, but I'm just pointing out that because they juxtapose these statements from the NIH with this analysis of abstracts, not aims or applications, but the analysis of abstracts, they are, it gets discussion.
So Dr. Lauer, some of the words that are.
Yeah. Don't give me, the hypocrisy in this conversation, it's not about rational thinking, and that's a part of bureaucracy, okay? I wanted to, in the closing page parts here, I just want to point out that the NIH has incredible resources for you to access. There's these public databases. It goes under the heading of reporter.nih.gov, but there's an active database, and there's also all the data I showed you is from this database or from reports. You can do searches and get lists of grants. You can search based on your topic or your area. You can get an idea. And going back for the last 10 or 15 years, I don't know that 10 or 15 years is useful. And then if you see something you're interested in, there are many levels of web interaction. You can drill down, you can look at publications, you can look at related grants, you can look at you can download all this into Excel spreadsheets, you can get impact scores, you can get all kinds of information. Yep. Yes, you can, yeah, oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, anyway, yes. Just a wealth of information. You can find out what study sections they were reviewed in, all kinds of things. And I'm gonna, just as an example, I was talking with the folks at this company called Inscopics that do these, you would know this. They do this in vivo imaging. And I ran, how many times has Inscopics been used in the public database? And there's actually grants where they said, we're going to use Inscopics. And anyway, here's some part of this deep dive is, looking at the K application trends. I didn't plot the K99 on here. This is something that's a big deal for me. I've been sharing this with Vanessa and the public and the societies for years. Sleep has a problem. Okay, the problem is the trend. It's not going down, but for K23s, we have 8 to 10 grants awarded each year, and there's the data. The K08s is between 1 and 2 applications funded each year, and it's not obvious from this, but it has to do with the number of applications submitted, and that's why Vanessa and the ASMF is doing this program, and why it should be supported is because we need to. The easiest way to improve these numbers, the most immediate way, is to prepare better applications that you can almost immediately change the results.
Is there a reason that you didn't pay over 172
There's so few in number. Yeah.
There's even fewer than well.
Few small numbers. Yeah. I was kind of focusing on, anyway, I just picked this, but so here's another portrayal. The numbers are different because the last figure showed new awards. This is total active grants at each institute in different mechanisms. And so again, the NHLBI has a lot, but again, many institutes are supporting sleep and circadian Ks. We'll just keep going because, and again, once you get into this, you can drill down as deep as you want to go if you have the time. And you can, sort through all this information. You can get the titles, the abstracts, you can get the study sections. You can dig deeper and deeper into this, and we won't go into there. The R01s, this is a plot for the R01s. We won't go into details. You can see the numbers of our new R01s and the red bars represent new applications. Didn't differentiate. This is study sections. In this analysis of 2021, there were 17 study sections, but 17, these are study sections. And then you see this thing called your special emphasis panel, SEP. Sleep and circadian applications, the vast majority of the ones that were funded or being reviewed are going to special emphasis panels. And that's a huge discussion, which we don't have time for, but but you're always looking for where, once you get to your R, not the Ks, but for the ROs, your R1s, you're going to be looking for where to send your application. And they now have a tool that's available to you. It's called the assisted referral tool. You just plug your abstract in here and they will come up with a list of suggestions. Okay. So the conclusion comes back again. It's always comes back to you as the investigator, scanning the space, your knowledge of the competition, selecting the question, choosing the grant mechanism, and promoting results. NIH supports the entire scope of biomedical research undertaking is possible, but it's a matter of competition. And that's my closing slide.